your life, and we as a species don't need people to lead us by force. We don't need to bully people to go along with the common will anymore. We have the tools to organize society. There are no excuses anymore. None of the things that our parents' generation were convinced we needed government for will we tolerate systems of violence supporting in the future. We're going to find all the ways to make all of those systems superfluous. That's the promise of our generation, and the internet gives us the perfect tool to be able to do it, and the way to show that there is no excuse that we need to turn to
Adam, I agree with you, but that leads us to this point. The system knows this awakening's happening. It's throwing everything it's got into the mix right now to block this awakening from happening. Because if you look to the founding fathers, that's not 235 years old. That's 235 years new. It was the greatest advancement in the Renaissance, in the awakening, in the Enlightenment. The globalists are trying to bring us back to 5,000 years ago, or 5,000 BC, or 10,000 BC, in an attempt to cement their control. And I don't see that paradigm working. But look at the founders. It was all about how many languages you could speak. It was all about your intelligence, being an inventor. It was about your mind and being goal-oriented and building up society, and people being loved instead of being attacked, or you're producing too much, we're now going to steal from you. It is the lowest common denominator versus the Enlightenment. So I want to give you a couple minutes to expound on that, and then in closing, because we're about to go to break and come back with one of your colleagues who's fighting, and of course you covered this, Liz, who's dealing with the milk police. But speak to where you see this awakening going.
Excellent. Yes, Liz Reitzig is doing great work for food freedom with the Raw Milk Freedom Riders. But about what you said, I think you give the super class a little bit too much credit, Alex. I think that we know that there is a super class out there, that there are people with ungodly concentrations of wealth and power in the world today. And I don't think they're really as coordinated as you give them credit for. I think there's a lot of competition within that group. I think there's a lot of disagreement. There are some rival factions. And I know you know this, and you know far more about the details of what they do than I do, and I certainly concede to your awareness of the facts. But I really think that there will always be a super class to the extent that humanity tolerates its own exploitation. And changing that fundamental paradigm of society is what's going to take that power away. So the people who are in that position to exploit see an opportunity and they take advantage of it. And they provide something for the people that we really want. I mean, if the people really need leaders, if the people have this psychological need to be led, someone is providing that. Someone is providing something of value, and they are getting a lot of money for it. They're being very well compensated, if you will. And what we are trying to convince people as libertarians, people with the message of freedom, is that you are better off in a real economic sense saying, no, we do not need these leaders. And I think that, as you point out, there is, in the current system, and by that to reference specifically the current systems of government and centralized banking and fiat currency, the existing mechanisms of exploitation, yes, in many ways are failing, and they will fall in chunks and fade away. And as they fall in chunks, particularly the big chunk right now, the U.S. dollar system, there are going to be people who are going to get their last licks in on an economy that's beholden to the U.S. dollar. I think that's really what you see with the Eurozone crisis. It's a good excuse to make more money, to exploit more. Wild people will accept it. It's what you see with quantitative easing here. Ben Bernanke is going to get in his last licks on this system for all of the people that are hooked up to it and benefit from it. And when it fails, there will be a new system of whatever exploitation is tolerated by the broader population, and it will go on until it is fully rejected, because people realize that they are beautiful, free, independent human beings who should be in charge of their own lives.
Adam, I think you've hit on a key area here. The social engineers, and they've written books and white papers on this that are public that we've covered, they're masters at human psychology and activity. So they create exploitive systems that are outside the free market, that are cheating, that use force by ganging up against the individual or smaller groups, smaller countries, and then they rationalize what they're doing. But then inside the countries, they then exploit the underclass and then have them wage war against the middle class, saying it's wrong that somebody's got more than you. As you said, there's always going to be a superclass. But are they oppressing other people? Are they doing it through cheating? Or are they doing it through the fact that we want to buy their products? We want to associate with them because of their skill, their athleticism, their beauty, their scientific mind, their constructiveness, their literature. Again, that's what gives the world diversity. And we have to realize, all of us are endowed by our Creator to have this pursuit of happiness, and that we're all created equal in different gifts, but that some people are going to shine more than others, are going to have better opportunities, are going to have better luck. And any attempt to ever suppress that is going to create a greater tyranny than you were fighting to begin with.
Well, I think that superclass will sort of, for lack of a better way of saying it, sort of naturally fade into the general population with time. And I don't mean that there won't always be people who are extraordinarily rich compared to the rest of the population. I think in a free market where you have industrial technology, there will be people capable of providing so much value to the rest of society that they end up being perhaps magnitudes even more wealthy than the rest. But as as we evolve, as we become more prosperous, more capable of providing goods and services that people want to consume, and more capable of being in charge of our own lives in a way that doesn't let those concentrations of power come to exist in the first place, I think they will really largely come to a sort of more natural distribution. Whereas right now we have an unnatural distribution of wealth concentration. Whereas naturally in a market with specialization of labor, you're going to have peaks of concentrations of wealth, but you're not going to have massive vertical spikes. And all of those really exist because of government. As we get past the government status paradigm and everybody is empowered and everybody's personal wealth is brought up, I think overall you're going to see that come to a much more natural.
Well, by the way, as you know, the globalists always talk about the economy overheating, people being too wealthy. They actually spend all their time trying to suppress the wealth. I mean, the truth is that there's such an engine that the system is always admittedly trying to suppress it. Now they want to sell this post-industrial crap. But the truth is nobody wants to see their children starving. And the whole collectivist model of getting people dependent, we see what nightmares that creates. It is the animating contest of liberty. Adam Kokesh, we'll have to cover the milk with the next guest, but it was great having you on. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Alex.
All right, there goes Adam Kokesh, ladies and gentlemen. Amazing information. And hey, even if you don't agree with it all, it's thought-provoking. And it scares you because deep down you know he's on to some major truths here. So is Ron Paul. So are we here at Infowars. Now, Adam and others, they like to talk about where we can go and show examples of what true freedom can do. I'm here in a desperate battle to expose the globalist, because before the population, in many respects, can wake up to the deeper truths, or simultaneously see them, we also need to identify the true monsters that are in control right now. We're going to go to break and come back and talk to our guest who's actually out there in the streets facing down the corrupt establishment straight ahead on the other side. If you're watching this later on myriad web channels out there and want to support these ideas and want to have access to it first and in higher quality, become a subscriber for 15 cents a day at prisonplanet.tv. And I should add, we're only running this till the end of the month, you can get 15-day free trial right now at prisonplanet.tv. So prisonplanet.tv or InfoWarsNews.com. We're going to go to break right now and come back with the conclusion of Infowars Nightly News. Stay with us. If you believe in this information and want to support its viral spread, go to the Infowars store at Infowars.com. We've got the new G.I. Joe Infowars t-shirts. We've got the incredible Pro Pure gravity-fed filters available at Infowars.com in the store. We've got a new DVD, Scientists Under Attack, the Don't Tread on Me flag. We've got all sorts of different bumper stickers to help spread the rebellion virally. It's all there, wristbands, citizen rule books in every order. Order online at Infowars.com today. The water filters, the canteens, it's all there. Infowars.com. And now, my friends, we're going to discuss the real threat to America. No, it's not the tens of trillions foreign banks have stolen, or the fact that world government's openly being announced in a world currency system, or Israel saying they're getting ready to strike Iran, and reportedly they have special forces already attacking facilities inside the country. Iran is calling it U.S. terror attacks. No, that's not an issue. Not our country basically turning into a depression, ridden system. None of that is a threat. Our borders wide open. 60,000 dead in the last 3 years inside Mexico. Our government caught shipping cocaine into the country and guns into Mexico. None of that is the threat. In fact, for 11 years, it wasn't a threat that Bernie Madoff, the SEC knew was ripping off people for tens of billions of dollars, and they covered it up. No, none of that is a threat. The threat is Amish producing cheese and raw milk, selling it to their neighbors or bartering it. The problem is food co-ops selling or bartering with friends and family raw milk. No, that's the threat here in America. And last week, a new type of freedom riders took action for the civil right of producing their own healthy, natural food. And they publicly drank raw milk, but even more wickedly, publicly drove, to illustrate the absurdity, across state lines and consumed milk in front of the Food and Drug Administration offices. And joining us is Liz Reitzig. She's one of the founders of Farm Food Freedom Coalition. And I have a few quotes here by the Food and Drug Administration where they say that they think that it's improper for anybody to ever consume raw milk. Here it is. It is the FDA's position that raw milk should never be consumed. Agency spokesperson Tamara N. Ward. Now, there's no law against it, but they'll still basically try to arrest you somehow for it. And so joining us today to discuss this is Liz Reitzig. And you guys haven't been arrested yet. I mean, you're a mother of 5. That makes you even more Al-Qaeda-ish. You're politically involved. That's even more dangerous. I mean, you're some type of serious thought criminal here, and you're enemy number 1, because I see reports of year-long stakeouts of Amish, always a big problem, for selling their neighbors milk, who really are undercover people who beg them to sell it to them. So tell us about the organization. Tell us about your move that's actually elicited the Food and Drug Administration to now respond.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Alex. And second of all, it's technically, in Pennsylvania at least, it's okay to sell raw milk to your neighbors. What's the illegality here is taking it across state lines, because somehow that milk becomes dangerous as it moves across the imaginary line that we call states. But that's where the real criminal activity is just in crossing that state line. And in response to the egregious acts that you just described by the FDA, a group of moms from California and the D.C. area, we banded together to form the Farm Food Freedom Coalition, specifically to take on and to bring to a broader audience what is happening with the FDA and our small farms.
Well, I would also add, not only is this unconstitutional in my research and view, it's another example of a federal power grab. They're claiming the Commerce Clause, aren't they, whenever they declare jurisdiction. It's not that it's unsafe when it crosses that state line, even if you live right on the state line. It's that the feds basically want to control all commerce in this country.
Right. That's exactly right.
Now,
but their whole argument is that it's never safe, that raw milk is inherently dangerous.
I mean, I've researched some of it, but you probably know more than I do. What's the history of how we went from regular, natural, wholesome milk, not being pasteurized, being basically extracted every morning and then delivered to your door, and then I guess Big Agri came in the last 50 years, demonized it, got state laws passed, so they could take dirty milk, spoiled milk, boil it with all the pus, blood, the rest of it, overworked cows, and then ship it across state lines, across the country, and then basically use government to shut down their competition, real milk, so the counterfeit, basically liquid cheese, pus derivative, that has now supplanted real milk, and real milk is an endangered species being hunted down by the federal stormtrooper Gestapo.
Well, actually, just the abbreviated history of real milk is that at the turn of the century, between the 1800s and 1900s, what was happening is investors were investing in dairy cows, but where the dairy cows lived was in confinement operations within the cities, so that the transportation was much shorter to get to this population.